Follow the money. It always leads somewhere they didn't want you to look.
On a crisp morning in May 1893, the town of Pullman, Illinois, buzzed with the hum of industry and community. A model of harmony between labor and management, it seemed the blueprint for a utopian society. Yet, less than 2 years later, it would become the epicenter of a conflict that left 30 people dead and the nation's railroads in disarray. Pullman was not just a town, it was a vision brought to life by George Pullman, a man who imagined a perfect world where workers were also citizens of a meticulously crafted environment. The town itself was a masterpiece of urban planning, with its red brick homes, manicured lawns, and a library, theatre and church, all designed to elevate the residents' quality of life. It sprawled over 4,000 acres, showcasing the grandeur of Pullman's ambition, an emblem of American ingenuity and progress. The centerpiece of this grand experiment was the Pullman Palace Car Company, a marvel of manufacturing prowess. By 1893, it was the largest employer in the region, with over 6,000 workers producing the luxurious rail cars that had come to symbolize the opulence of travel. Each car that rolled out of the factory was a work of art, adorned with plush upholstery and gleaming brass fittings. This prosperity was palpable, a symbol of hope and opportunity for the thousands who made their lives in Pullman. Life in the town was, at least on the surface, enviable. Workers lived in homes owned by the company, rented at rates that included indoor plumbing and gas lighting, luxuries uncommon at the time. The streets were clean, crime was low, and the schools were considered the best in the area. Residents could spend their evenings at the arcade theatre, watch a play, or indulge in a lecture at the library, all part of Pullman's vision to nurture not just the body, but the mind. But beneath this veneer of perfection, the reality was more complicated. The town, while outwardly the epitome of communal success, was tightly controlled. Every aspect of life was overseen by the company, from the maintenance of the houses to the selection of books in the library. This paternalism was both a blessing and a burden, fostering a growing undercurrent of discontent among those who felt stifled by the lack of autonomy. As May 1893 drew to a close, the Chicago World's Fair was in full swing, showcasing the marvels of the current age, a fitting backdrop for a town that seemed itself a marvel. But in Pullman, as the summer sun warmed the cobblestones, the first shadows of a looming trouble began to appear. The nationwide economic downturn was whispering its warnings. Orders for rail cars began to dwindle, and rumors of cutbacks started to circulate among the workers. The town stood as George Pullman had envisioned, a beacon of progressive industrial design and harmonious living. Yet, as in any grand design, the devil was in the details, and the first signs of strain were beginning to show. The foundations of Pullman's perfect world were about to be tested, and soon the fractures would become impossible to ignore. As 1893 turned into 1894, the economic downturn intensified, and the Pullman Palace Car Company found itself in dire straits. Orders plummeted by more than 2/3, leaving the factories eerily underutilized. George Pullman, the man whose name was synonymous with luxury rail travel, faced a critical decision: how to keep his enterprise afloat without losing his reputation as a benevolent industrialist. Pullman chose austerity. In May of 1894, he slashed workers' wages by approximately 25%. A drastic measure meant to curb the company's escalating losses. This was not an isolated decision, but part of a broader, sweeping cost-cutting initiative. Yet, notably absent from this belt tightening was any reduction in the rents and utility costs that workers had to pay to live in the company-owned town. George Pullman insisted that the company town remain financially independent, refusing to subsidize it with profits from other operations. It was a decision that struck at the very heart of the town's uneasy peace. The rent, fixed and unyielding, absorbed as much as a quarter of a worker's income, and with their wages slashed, many of Pullman's residents were plunged into a precarious financial position almost overnight. To make matters worse, Pullman enforced rent collection with a ruthless efficiency. Failure to pay meant eviction, and there was no recourse or relief offered. The idealized balance that once characterized Pullman began to tip dangerously towards instability. For workers like Jenny Curtis, the situation was untenable. Jenny, a seamstress, saw her wages fall from $16 a week to a mere $12, an amount that could barely cover her living expenses. Like many others, she felt the bite of Pullman's strategy, and her grievances found an outlet in the newly organized American Railway Union, led by Eugene V. Debs. The ARU was gaining momentum, advocating for fairer wages and working conditions across the increasingly interconnected web of American industry. Pullman's refusal to negotiate with his employees or even acknowledge the union galvanized discontent. In June, as tensions simmered, the ARU held a meeting in Chicago. More than 3,000 Pullman workers voted to strike. It was a bold move, a last resort for many whose financial futures were crumbling. Jenny Curtis, speaking on behalf of the Female Law Workers Union, declared, "We are not the slaves of the Pullman Company. We are not the machines of the Pullman Company." The strike spread like wildfire, and within weeks, Pullman's once thriving town was paralyzed. Production halted, the streets emptied of the usual bustling activity, and a palpable tension hung in the air. Pullman's insistence on maintaining the status quo, even in the face of crisis, reflected a profound miscalculation. He underestimated the depth of his workers' resolve, and overestimated the loyalty that his paternalistic policies had fostered. As the strike dragged on, Pullman's image as a benevolent overseer began to crumble. Reports emerged of the desperate conditions within the town: families on the brink of eviction, children in rags, hunger shadowing the faces of those who had once been proud craftsmen. The public's perception shifted, seeing not a utopia, but a company town where prosperity was reserved for the company's ledger and not its people. Pullman's unwavering stance, coupled with his authoritarian control over the town, incited a broader movement of labor unrest. Workers in other sectors, witnessing the plight of Pullman's workers and inspired by Deb's fiery speeches, railroads across the nation were disrupted as the ARU called for a boycott of Pullman cars. What began as a local dispute swelled into a national crisis, paralyzing rail traffic and bringing commerce to a standstill. George Pullman's intransigence was matched only by his misreading of the situation. He believed the federal government would intervene on his behalf to maintain the flow of commerce. In July 1894, his prediction came true, but not in the way he had hoped. President Grover Cleveland dispatched federal troops to break the strike, arguing that the disruption threatened the delivery of U.S. mail, a federal offense. The arrival of troops in Pullman and Chicago escalated tensions further, culminating in violent clashes. The worst fears materialized as riots erupted and the number of dead began to climb. 30 lives lost in what became a tragic reminder of the folly of ignoring human dignity in the pursuit of economic stability. But the worst was still ahead. With each passing day, the fabric of Pullman's vision frayed further. The strike revealed the inherent flaws in a system that placed profits over people, and the unchecked ambition of its creator became its undoing. As federal intervention loomed and the town teetered on the brink of collapse, the very ideology that had built Pullman was now poised to tear it apart. In the early hours of July 7, 1894, Pullman, Illinois, stood on edge. Dawn broke over a town caught in the throes of an escalating crisis. Federal troops had arrived the day before, their presence amplifying tensions rather than quelling them. The air was thick with anticipation and fear. By 9 a.m., the streets were no longer just eerily quiet. They were patrolled by soldiers, their bayonets glinting in the morning sun. The previous night's skirmishes had left the town shaken, a precursor to the violence that would soon erupt. By mid-morning, the scale of the unrest became clear. In Chicago, just miles away, the strike had reached critical mass. Thousands of workers from various industries had joined in solidarity, their numbers swelling the ranks of those determined to see change. Railroad yards, once bustling with activity, now lay dormant, evidence of the widespread support for the Pullman strike. At 11 a.m., tensions reached a boiling point. Federal troops deployed to maintain order began clashing with crowds of strikers and sympathizers who had gathered to protest for deployment. A skirmish near the yards quickly escalated, with angry voices rising above the din, punctuated by the sharp retort of gunfire. Panic spread as bystanders fled, and those who remained engaged in a desperate struggle against an authority they felt had betrayed them. As noon approached, chaos ensued. The searing July sun did nothing to dispel the tension, only adding to the oppressive heat of the day. Reports of violence and looting trickled in from various parts of the city. By 1 p.m., the heart of the conflict lay not just within Pullman, but throughout the rail network that crisscrossed the nation. Train cars were overturned and set alight, smoke billowing into the sky, a stark symbol of the turmoil engulfing the country. Within Pullman itself, anxiety turned to dread. Families huddled in their homes, unsure of what the future held. Many had ties to the strikers, their livelihoods inextricably linked to the outcome of the protests. By 3 p.m., the entire town seemed paralyzed, its fate hanging in the balance. For those who dared to venture out, the streets bore witness to the grim reality of the standoff. Broken glass, scattered debris, and the distant echo of marching feet. As the afternoon stretched into early evening, the situation grew increasingly dire. The violence that had erupted in the morning showed no signs of abating. At 5 p.m., a particularly fierce confrontation unfolded near the rail yards, and the fate of Pullman and the nation hung precariously in the balance. With troops opening fire on the strikers, the sound of gunshots reverberated through the streets, a chilling reminder of the escalating conflict. The casualty count began to rise, each life lost a poignant reminder of the high stakes in this struggle for dignity and justice. By nightfall, Pullman stood as a town transformed. The once idyllic vision of harmony and progress lay shattered, replaced by a landscape scarred by conflict and loss. The strike had become more than a local dispute. It was now a national crisis that threatened the very fabric of American society. The fires that burned in the rail yards seemed to consume not just the infrastructure of travel, but the ideals that had once underpinned the Pullman experiment. As midnight approached, a weary silence settled over the town. The day's events had left an indelible mark on the community. For the workers, the cost of standing up for their rights had been high, yet many felt a sense of grim resolve. The battle for Pullman was not just about wages or rent. It was a fight for recognition and respect in a system that seemed indifferent to their plight. In the end, the collapse of Pullman was not just the failure of a company town, but a poignant chapter in the larger narrative of labor rights in America. The dream that George Pullman had envisioned had turned into a nightmare, leaving behind a legacy of unrest and a profound lesson in the human cost of unchecked ambition. In the aftermath of the strike, the town of Pullman stood wounded, its grandiose vision tarnished. Federal troops had quelled the unrest, but the scars remained evident, both in the hearts of the residents and the physical fabric of the town. The workers returned to their daily lives, but things would never be the same. Many found themselves disillusioned, grappling with the bitter reality that the company town, once hailed as progressive, had become a symbol of oppression and neglect. The American Railway Union's defeat did not stop the tides of change sweeping across the nation. In 1898, the Illinois Supreme Court ordered the Pullman Company to sell off its residential properties, a decision that slowly began to dismantle George Pullman's utopian dream. By 1907, the company had divested itself of most of the town's buildings, marking the end of Pullman's experiment in paternalism. For many workers, the strike was a turning point, a catalyst for the labor movement that would eventually secure better rights and conditions for workers across the United States. But for those directly affected, the cost was profound.
Families struggled to recover from the financial ruin the strike had wrought. The emotional toll was immeasurable as they grappled with the loss of stability and trust. The retirees who had hoped to live out their days in the comfort of Pullman's promise found themselves facing an uncertain future. The security they had once felt within the carefully constructed community evaporated, leaving only memories of a time when the streets were filled with hope and prosperity. Many left the town, seeking employment in burgeoning industries elsewhere, while others stayed, trying to salvage what they could from the wreckage of their lives. Yet, amidst the hardship, the strike's legacy endured. It highlighted the vital need for labor rights, setting the stage for future reforms. The sacrifices made by the Pullman workers resonated in the halls of government, influencing legislation that would protect future generations from similar exploitation. Today, Pullman stands as a historic district, its past preserved in red brick and manicured lawns, a silent reminder of the complexities of human ambition and the striving for a better world. The ideals that once inspired George Pullman were not entirely in vain. They served as a reminder of the delicate balance between progress and profit. In the end, Pullman was not just a place, it was a story about power, pride, and ambition, and the enduring resilience of those who dared to dream. A story that taught America about the real cost of trying to build a perfect world. With its final line inscribed, "Here lies Pullman, where ambition met its reckoning."